Welcome along. Now, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt came with no rabbit when he delivered his budget today. Not a sausage, nothing at all. Every major measure had already been briefed to the press, and the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, had his tail up with this response.
There we have it, the last desperate act of a party that has failed. Britain in recession, the national credit card maxed out, and despite the measures today, the highest tax burden for 70 years. The first Parliament since records began to see living standards fall, confirmed by this budget today. That is their record. It is still their record. Give with one hand and take even more with the other. And nothing they do between now and the election will change that.
Jeremy Hunt did make a fat joke about Keir Starmer in the light of what Mandelson said. He also went off Angela Rayner on the old capital gains tax front, and she did not like that. But the first thing out of his mouth was about unveiling a statue to Muslim war heroes, which left many people scratching their head, especially how it costs £1 million. But it's time now for my exclusive interview with former Home Secretary Priti Patel. Now, Starmer says that her party is doomed. I started by asking her whether or not today's budget can actually win the Tories the next election.
I think that's the wrong question to ask right now, for very good reasons. The budget has only been announced today. And Patrick, I've mentioned to you previously, I've been a Treasury Minister before. Budget's a difficult thing to do because it's a balancing act. It's a fiscal balancing act. And I think we have to look at the measures that have been announced today and what it actually means to, your viewers, basically, hard-working families across the country. And they're going to be digesting the budget tonight when they watch your programme and watch the news and everything else. And I think we then have to step back and actually look at what does it mean for them. And there are some good measures. We can talk about lots of measures and, direction of travel. This budget, in my view, has been signalling quite a few things, basically. Yes, lower taxes in terms of employment taxes, so national insurance. I think more will come. I suspect there'll be another fiscal event sometime this year. And then you could ask the question after that one, is it going to win the election?
That implies that you think it's not going to be a May election, then?
I don't think there will be a May election. I really don't. And, I could be called out on this in the next 2 weeks, so be it. But I think, look, Jeremy Hunt was very clear in the budget today, and his tone, it's all in the tone and the presentation. Times are difficult. We have economic challenges. We have structural issues. I was in the Treasury back in 2014. I remember what coalition government was like post-financial crisis. Currently, we're still reeling the effects of COVID, the Ukraine conflict, global inflation. Inflation is still sticky, but thankfully the projections are that inflation is going to continue to come down. That's a great thing. That is a really good thing.
I do know a lot of our viewers who are very keen to see something done about inheritance tax. And there wasn't...
Sure, well, no, it's a costly thing to do, so there are lots of tax measures that I would personally like to see, the changes that have come in. Your viewers will have a whole shopping list, I've got no doubt about that. But don't forget, these are costly measures. So inheritance tax being one example, the costs are very high, but also we have to look at, I say we, the Treasury, our ministers in government would look at, well, who benefits from that? Does everyone benefit, or is it a certain section of the population that benefits?
They're a bit too afraid of that, though, this idea that they get a headline in The Guardian that says, look, you've given a tax break for the rich.
No, I don't, actually. In all fairness, I don't. I think it's really important within the context of where we are, and I'll say it, we've got the highest tax burden in 70 years. That is a fact. Taxes are too high. Taxes have been going up. On that basis, it's far more equitable to bring taxes down for working people and working families. That's why I'm very pro the national insurance cut. By the way, I think this government will be the government that will literally pave the way for the abolition of national insurance. In the past, I've spoken about, even merging national insurance and income tax. That is complicated, but that could have been another way forward. But the fact that we've had a second national insurance cut tells me that they are signalling for further reductions and the potential abolition of it. And again, working people benefits from that. And the other point to make about national insurance is that, removing the disincentives for work, that's where this government is at. And I think that's commendable, and I think Jeremy Hunt should take some credit for that.
Well, we've definitely got to get more people into work. What about the non-dom stuff, though? People have accused you of stealing Labour's policy. Initially, they're saying it's going to raise about £3 billion a year. The concern will be that people will just leave, and that also, apparently, in 2022... Jeremy Hunt himself said it would cost us £8 billion.
So that's a fact. You know, you can't, once you've said things like that, you can't unsay it, right? But don't forget, that £8 billion would have been based on economic data at the time. Data shifts, OBR forecasts change a lot, and the margin of error is very high. I mean, it's a choice the government has made. You know, they're going to do it, and you could argue the woes, the rights and wrongs of it.
Do you agree with it?
So I think we have to see what it now means, basically, see the reaction to it. Historically, I'll be very candid, you know, I love London, I love the city of London, you know, I was born in London and brought up in and around London and the South East. I think we've been a global financial hub, we've been very attractive to foreign direct investment, and obviously people from overseas come in here.
You think it might cost us?
I don't know, and I say that because you've got to remember, we're competing now in a totally different world. There are other big international hubs. We need to do much more here to attract capital finance, you know, foreign direct investment. London is incredibly attractive. Whatever people say, people want to come here, live here, work here, and also come and shop here. You know, look at London. It is a beautiful city. But at the same time, we know that a lot of international people have aired their concerns around this. So I don't want to be too judgmental. You know, I want our city, our capital city, to thrive, be so successful, our country to be successful. But we will have to wait and see in terms of what the overall
And he has nicked Labour's policy here, hasn't he?
Well, he's adopted it. I won't say nicked it. I think he's adopted it. They've looked at it, and there's no harm in that. There is no harm in it. But at the end of the day, I'm a practical person. I'm only interested in the practicalities of it. If it's going to work, if it's going to deliver, and, you know, what it also means for the Treasury coffers as well. This is really important because we're spending so much public money. Public spending is 1.2 trillion. Yeah. It's going up. The size of the state, I'm very vocal about this. Public spending is high. The size of the state is very high. People like me want to see lower taxes, but I'm a realist. You only get lower taxes when you do much more in terms of curtailing public spending, and that means hard choices.
Welcome back. It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, only on GBNews, and it is time now for the second part of my exclusive interview with former Home Secretary Priti Patel. We covered a lot of ground, including whether Shamima Begum should return to the UK. The United Nations certainly thinks so. And my report last night on the latest grooming gang scandal. But I started by asking her about the country's soaring immigration figures. 3 times at the dispatch box that the Treasury couldn't rely on mass immigration. Quite untimely, the OBR has then increased the migration prediction from 245,000 in the medium term to 315,000. But we are addicted to mass migration.
So we are. I think we should be absolutely honest about this. And even when I was in government, you know, I tried to bring in measures, you know, and we actually, the language I use was almost Treasury language, like we had automatic levers to basically say, you know, that's it. We've reached a level of migration that's enough. This is legal migration, by the way. Yes. Differentiating between illegal and illegal. And on legal migration, having those automatic measures means the caps. You introduce caps. We could have brought in a cap. In fact, when I left the Home Office back in September 2022, we put a programme in place for the new Home Secretary to basically even come to Parliament, look at caps, bring in proper measures. I say proper measures to say that in the following sectors, we've filled almost quotas, basically. We've had enough people come in, and therefore there's more that we need to do. But, Patrick, the real challenge here is, and I say this, you know, with my background as an economist as well, is that we don't have a labour market strategy for this country. And I've been going on about this even when I was in government. We must have a labour market strategy because too many sectors in our economy rely, as you have said, on more migration and actually, in some quarters, unskilled migration, which is a no-no. We should not be enabling that to happen. We should be doing much more. Employers should be paying people properly, and we should have proper incentives for them to train more people. And that's the rebalancing that we need in our labour market. And I say this for very good reasons. While we've got a tight labour market right now, we've also had high levels of inflation. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is that inflation starts going up and unemployment goes up, you know, domestically. basically, and we cannot have that. We've got to do much more with our domestic population to invest in them in the long term, not in the short term, long term, and that means skills, proper employment programmes and proper employment training.
Yeah, I mean, it also does have a big impact on British culture as well, I know, and on our society as a whole, doesn't it? And I wonder if whether or not that's something that should be factored in a little bit. Look, I've got to ask you as well about a couple of things here. I did a story last night that went absolutely massive on social media, which was about, it was a grooming gang and it was refugees involved, and there's no talk of deporting these people. I've got to ask, with your former Home Secretary cap on, would you be looking to deport these people?
So we were, and we did. So I think, I didn't see your report, so there were probably some very specific cases.
They were Syrians, so it's...
So let's be very clear about this, because quite frankly, I've been there, I've seen how difficult it is. Number one, these are foreign national offenders, they are criminals, and they have caused terrible harm to individuals. They are in the criminal justice system. They should be removed. You just said they're Syrians. So on that basis, because of the issue with Syria, it will be very difficult to actually remove them from the country because, conflict in Syria, etc. However, these people should be incarcerated for the crimes that they committed, and they should not be allowed back in the community. End of story. I have had cases, in fact, from Rotherham in the past, and to be fair, the grooming gang situation there was terrible. There's a lot of work, actually, all credit to agencies, brilliant work taking place. These were British people that were involved in grooming, and yet they were allowed to stay in the community. There were some that we actually removed back to Pakistan, for example, and there were cases where we were constantly in the courts, and we were thwarting those cases as well, which is really important, based on the criminal evidence and the abuse and the harm that they cause to the individuals. So we must stop at nothing. We must stop at absolutely nothing to, A, make sure these people not only prosecuted, put behind bars, but never allowed back in the community. And also, when they're foreign national offenders, we must do everything to remove them.
OK, and very, very quickly, Shamima Begum, the UN has said that she was trafficked and they've got this credible evidence. There's talk about her coming back in the country. Every single person in government says, if you knew what we knew, you wouldn't let her
That's absolutely
back
clear. The UN are wrong on this, basically, and the UN should not be getting involved in what is a very domestic case of the United Kingdom. Every Home Secretary, my predecessors, and those, I guess, that have followed me since have been very clear on this. That case is closed as far as we're concerned, and the evidence against her is so substantial.